Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist Podcast. I'm Danielle, and this is Ani Rivera. We've been doing this for like 10 years. Just kidding. We have been doing this for a solid year and a half.
No, it's almost 2 years. Didn't we start beginning of 18?
I don't remember, but I remember I was like, who listens to podcasts? And then like we get students all the time. They're like, oh my God, I love the podcast. I love the podcast.
I think it's been 2.5 years.
And you know what's so funny? With podcasts, like you can't really track like likes and engagement and stuff like that. So I never know who's listening until I'll be like out and about somewhere and someone's like, I listen to your podcast. I'm like, oh, you do? Oh, thanks. Like, so you never know. You never know like the impact it's making. And it's like one of those things that you're like, should we leave in today? We're like, should we do it? Should we not? Like, we're like, we don't have time. And then we're like, we're going to do it. Like the power went out. The wind is crazy here. And we were committed. So we're here.
There's even a client that comes to DKW Salon. She found us through the podcast.
Oh, really?
And is now finishing cosmetology school next month, actually. She takes her test.
You told me about her. Is she your client, right?
Yeah, she's super rad, really nice. But I get a lot of messages about the podcast. There were a few weeks where we had replays because we literally didn't have time. And one girl's like, can you guys please do a new one? I'm so excited. I was like, I'm sorry.
I've listened to them all. Yeah, but I think we're at like 140 something.
At this point, we've
I don't
stopped
even know.
saying
We
episode
used to
number.
say like episode number 400, la la la. But every week we try to like really pertain or like have our message be to hairstylists. But again, I've had multiple people, whether they're hairstylists, entrepreneur, moms, like dog owners, like whatever. Like they just like, I love the show. So every week we try to add value for you guys. And we kind of are like, what is going on? We don't ever pre-script this. We literally show up and we're like, what should we talk about? Like, what do they want to, what does the world want to hear today?
Well, and I'll have you know, I had one of our students who's about to attend our virtual convention in December. She messaged me and she's like, my why is, she's like, every time I see your dogs, it reminds me how badly I want 2 Frenchies. She's like, that's my why. Like, I'm determined to get dogs.
Why?
She wants dogs.
Does she have kids?
I don't know. She wants dogs.
She wants dogs. Well, you know, there's dog moms and then there's dog moms. So, you know.
I'm respecting it.
You can't get more than 2 dogs. Otherwise, you're the weird dog lady.
I know. And let me tell you, 2's enough.
Yeah, no, when I went
enough.
from 1 to 2, because I used to have 2 weenie dogs, but then I had babies and I was like, I can't have babies and 2 weenie dogs. And I ended up giving one of my weenie dogs away. And it was really hard.
Dude, it's a lot.
It was a lot.
But really, we're here other than talk to you about weenie dogs. Although I will say I saw someone got 3 pumpkins and they carved like the middle one
Did
is
they put their dog in the pumpkin?
No, they carved in the pumpkin where like the middle one was the body of a weenie, the end one was the tail, and the front one was the head. So the 3 pumpkins made one long weenie.
Okay, so I don't know if this would be rude. I always wanted to do it with my dog whenever, and then I always wanted to do it with Isla. But last year she was too little. But would it be rude if I got not rude, but can I get a really big pumpkin and carve it out and sticker in it? Can I? I think she'll like it because you know what's so funny? She'll be in my house and she'll be like rummaging through like boxes and stuff, and it's so funny because she'll try to get in these boxes that she can't fit in. Like it'll be like a makeup container, and I'm like, Isla, you're 15 months old. You don't fit in my eyeshadow.
It's an eyeshadow palette.
Yeah,
ma'am.
I'm like, what? She's like trying to get in there. So I'm like, I think if I carve out like a really big pumpkin and put her in it, she might think it's fun. I'm doing it.
I just saw that one of our students did that, and her baby did not like it, but I think Ella would have a good time.
Well, I wanted to do it last year, but I was like, she was like 3 months old, and I was like, no, she can't even sit up. Like, I'm not gonna
really
pop.
little.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pop her in a pumpkin, but I'm gonna do it, guys. I'm gonna do it. Check out my Instagram, Danielle K. White. Look for the pumpkin, a baby in a pumpkin.
So
really,
today we really want to talk to you guys about choices and the choices that we make, and realizing that there's really always something you can do. I had an interesting call with, I won't say who it is, but it's someone that we know. She's been renting a suite of her own for a few years, and she's in a place that she's like, we're here for my husband's job. Like, it's cool, but whatever. And she actually just recently realized that her husband was not going to get his job back because of COVID. Like, they were cutting that department. And she called me and she's like, I was offered a position inside of one of the trainer salons. She's like, I don't know if I should do it. She's like, I don't know. Like, can I go from being like my own boss to then working for someone else? And like, I don't know how I would like it, but we love the area. And I really sat there listening to her because she was like, I wanted to talk to you. She's like, because you did it. I'm like, I did do that. Like literally exactly what you're doing. And she realized by the end of the call, she was kind of like, I can really do whatever I want. I'm
I was going to say, she's at a place where I remember for Garrett and I, when like, I mean, he didn't lose his job. We just like were going practically bankrupt and had no money and all this stuff. And I was kind of like, can I do this? Can I start a business? Can I do this? And I was like, there's no better time to do it right now. And I think oftentimes there's things that we need to do inside of life and business, but we're avoiding the elephant in the room. And it could be for me, like I always just planned on Garrett making money. So even though I was like, oh, I could raise my prices, I could hire an assistant, I could go to a better salon, I could do this and this and this. I was like, but my money, we're not relying on my money, so I don't really care. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until we lost that source of income where I was like, oh, and I could have spent, my first 8 years of doing hair, building up more of a business. And I just kind of always relied on him. So I think it's important. Like, I think a lot of times we kind of literally like avoid the elephant in the room.
And it's really hard because generally the elephant in the room is something that it's painful in one way or another, whether it's emotionally.
I wasn't even in pain at the time. Like, I was just like, oh, this is great. I love doing hair. But I literally didn't think as myself as a business owner or a hairdresser that could provide. I was like my money doesn't count. Like literally, I was like, my money doesn't count until like I had kids and we lost everything. And then I was like, well, fuck, my money should count.
Yeah. And sometimes it's unfortunate, but it takes something like that to really shift perspective. Yeah. Because you view things only one way, whether it's your business, your money, how you act in a relationship, like all of those things, you see things one way. It's almost like it's like playing dodgeball until something like hits you in the fucking face and you're like, oh my God.
Oh. And then you act surprised and you're like, how did I get here? And you're like, how did you not recognize that you were going that direction? Right?
And it's like there are signs everywhere. We always call them like red flags. It's like the elephant in the room, the things that you tend to not address. And it happens in business and it happens in your personal life. Like it can literally happen anywhere. And I feel the crazy thing is if you don't address the elephant or you don't address that red flag in the beginning and
it gets bigger.
Yeah.
Like the tsunami starts to build.
Yeah. You're like, no, I'm just gonna keep looking this way.
Like that looks scary and painful. I feel like women, I always say this, I'm like, women act like they're people pleasers, but they're really conflict avoiders. They don't want to have those tough conversations. They're like, no. But the problem keeps getting bigger, right? And until you finally just like snap one day and you're like, okay.
Or I feel like we make up even more stories that like keep us either in that place of pain or keep us from like really seeing the reality of what our business and our lives are.
Right.
Like even I know I've talked to some girls that they're like, well, I'm in a partnership in my business, but I can't do it alone. Like I don't know this, I don't know that, I can't do it. And I'm like, okay, but if you put yourself in the position where you didn't have a choice but to fucking do it,
you'd figure it out.
I can guarantee you that you would do it.
Right.
Because it's not an option.
Well, it's so funny too, even for me when I opened my salon, it's been, I don't even know how many years I've had my salon because I had one space, then I moved to the space across the street and then I bought the space and expanded the space. Has it been 5 years, 6 years?
I met you in 2016, March, and you already had that salon. So I would say at least 2015, so 5 years.
Yeah, so I'm going on 5 years. It still feels like kind of like a baby, but I learned so much, and I didn't know how to like open a salon or do it or whatever. But I was already educating and teaching at that point, and I felt like that was the next step because I kept getting business questions, and I was like, I feel like I need some credibility. Like I built up my own business by myself, and I was like, okay, but I don't have like a full staff. I don't have like, this is the next step that I need to do. And it was like, I remember I always had this story that I needed to have Garrett do it for me. Like, again, I went back to like being like, oh, I don't know how to do it, but he'll know how to do it. But he had never been a salon owner. So I'm not
he only knew parts.
Right. And so I'm not really sure why I always was like, well, he'll do it. And then even with like building up my education brand, I was always like, he's doing all these amazing events. And like, I don't know how to do it. I can't do it. And I handed my business over to him for probably 2 years. And it was great. And it got it going. And I'm so grateful for that. But the minute I saw it, like, I'm like, this isn't even going the direction that I wanted to go. And that's when I realized I'm like, if you want to take back your business, if you want to see it, get to where it can go, then you're going to have to just figure it out. And I finally like surrendered. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't think Garrett necessarily knows which direction. He's just a quick start, right?
Oh, he's a quick start.
He's a quick start. And I'm like the one that's like overanalyzes things and like thinks about it too much. And now I've become more of a quick start because I'm like, no, we just have to go and we will course correct and figure it out along the way. And really that's like what we've done even this last year with the Academy. If you think about it, like we have an amazing foundation, but I always wasn't like, hey, this is it and done. Like it's like an always evolving project, I feel like.
Well, and I feel that one of the reasons, like, because I like what you said, that you're like, I don't know how to do it, I'll just have Garrett do it. And I feel like a lot of people do that, but it's almost like, I feel like it's almost something like so they can place blame. Like, let's say if BMS hadn't worked, it wouldn't have fallen on you. It would have been like, oh, well, Garrett fucked it up. He did it. It was him. Right. And I feel like sometimes that's why we do that when we're like, oh, I don't know how to do it, but so-and-so, I'll just have them do it. I'll just have them do it. Because then if something doesn't work, if it turns out that it doesn't pan out or whatever it is, it's like they have someone to blame. It's like a scapegoat. Oh, well, yeah, it didn't work out, but I didn't really do it. He did it over there,
See, and I was like frustrated. I remember thinking like it was it was working at some level, but then when I like really dug deep and wanted to take back ownership because he was so frustrated, I could see like he can't run his business and run mine. Like he can't.
It's too much for one person.
And he's not passionate about mine. He's passionate about his. And I was like, okay. And so the more I got involved, actually, I was like super irritated at Garrett. And I was like, why the fuck are you doing it this way? And this doesn't make sense. These numbers don't add up. And he's like, take over your fucking company. And I was like,
well, how dare you?
I will. Yeah. And I think I realized in that moment, I'm like, it's not that he was doing it wrong, but it wasn't necessarily the direction that I would have taken it. And that's my fault because but I had to step out. Like we would argue so much because he'd be doing stuff in my business and I'd be like, we're hairdressers. We don't do it like that. And he's like, cool. And I remember being like, I can't, like, we were fighting so much about it. And he's like, I need you to give me full ownership or I'm out. And I was like, cool, I'll give you full ownership. And, you know, it was a crazy 2 years. And like I said, it helped build things up. But now I feel like more solid because, again, it's not like I know exactly my next move, but I feel like course correcting and figuring out, I feel more organized and stronger than ever.
Oh, yeah. Like, because I think a lot of people think in order to have an idea or a plan or something come to fruition that you have to have every single step from A to Z, 1 to a million. But that's not necessarily it. You can say, hey, I know for this year, my goals and my outcomes are X, Y, and Z. Right. Great. And then I always say work backwards. Like,
yeah.
And
you called it reverse engineering on our last show.
Yeah.
And I said that on one of my Instagram posts and somebody's like, reverse engineering, I love that. But it's true because what women do and people in general, we think about all the steps in between. So we're like A and then there's B and then there's C and then there's D and then we're like, fuck it, that's way too much work. Instead, you have to be like, okay, what? And I always say this too. I'm like, sometimes the steps in between are not what you think, right? So you have to look at what's the outcome you want, whether it's in business or relationships or whatever it is. What is the outcome you want? Then you figure out the steps in between to get to the outcome. Instead of trying to make the steps up to get to the outcome, you're like, wait, that took a hard left, and I really needed to go right. So I think you have to look at the outcome first and ask yourself, like, if this is my end result, what do I need to do to get there?
And I feel like it's almost like building a puzzle. Sometimes we have, and everybody's done this, where we have a piece and we're like, I swear to God, that piece goes there, and you put it down, and then you try to like mash it down, and you're like, it's so weird, it doesn't fit, but if I push it hard enough, it does. It's like, but wait a minute, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And that can, and think about your business. I feel like artists who are really busy, or anyone who's busy and has like an assistant or someone that helps them, even though like deep down some days you're like, I know that assistant doesn't work. She doesn't have the same mentality.
Or think about when you're drowning and you're like, I just need somebody, help me. And you hire somebody, like the first person who comes along because you're like, cool, fuck it, your work. Yeah, thank God, because you're already in that place of drowning and panic. And so now for me, it's like I try to recognize the signs before I'm drowning. I'm like,
for sure.
Okay, I need help with X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to start looking for an assistant now. Okay, for a lot of our artists that don't have assistants, it's crazy because they're like, well, I'm going to build up my extension clientele first and then hire an assistant. I'm like, cool. So you're going to wait till you're drowning and then hire help?
So you're going to die first and then get help. Cool.
Right. I'm like, well, what if you hired an assistant like not 5 days a week, but maybe you had somebody 2 days a week and then you worked up to 5 days a week or whatever, however many days a week you want to work. But if you wait till you're like in panic mode and drowning, that's when you fall even further behind because like I said, you hire like whoever because you're drowning and then you put all this time into training them and then you're like, fuck it, I don't need an assistant. I'm not ever doing it. I'm going to do it by myself. And you have all these stories and you just stay in the same place. And I don't know why we do that.
Well, and it's a matter of, it's called being proactive and not reactive. If you constantly feel like your life, like you're in firefighter mode and you're always just having to put out fires and you wake up every day and you're like, who's drowning? What's on fire? What's about to fall down?
Yeah.
That's not actually good. It's even like going to the doctor. You don't want to wait until you feel like your limb is falling off to be like, I should probably get it checked out. Like you should have yearly checkups and things like that.
Well, even with Garrett's company, and he built Warrior up, and it was like, there was like a point where he had like 50 employees and he looked at his payroll and he was like, and it was like the company itself was bringing in more money, but they weren't making any more money. And there were so many people, and he was just literally fight or flight every day. He'd go to work, and I was like, I don't know if he's going to make it through the day.
And some of those hires were so stupid.
So stupid. Like, because he wasn't like, he literally was just like, hey, 10 grand for you and 10 grand for you. And I was like, oh my God. But he hit that wall, and then he literally went from like 30 employees to like 5. Like, and then he gutted. He gutted, and I was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? But it was like we were on a moving train, and we could like see like the end coming, and it was like, yeah, like I'm at that point. Like there's nothing else. I can't continue down this path. That's scaling is not really the option right now.
Well, and that's why, like I was saying, like even if you have an assistant, I know that thinking about getting rid of them and then having to find someone else and then hire someone else and then train someone else, then get that person up to speed seems like a daunting task.
Right.
But it's something that has to be done to like clear things off your plate and be able to move forward. Because if then you go and you're like, I won't get rid of this one just yet, you end up taking a lot more time to then train this one and course correct this one and all the things. And same goes for relationships. Like it's everything across the board, whether professional or business. If you're in a partnership and you're like, this is not working, we do not have the same vision, like the work ethic is different, like whatever it is, if it doesn't work, it's actually better if you address it in the beginning and upfront in a very direct way, not to be a dick like, hey, I think you're...
It's almost like you're at choice, whether it's a business or a personal relationship, and you're like, this is where I'm going. And there's certain things like that you can compromise, but you never want to feel like you're settling, and you never want to feel like you're regressing, right? You're like, even it's like if everybody on my team, right? It's like, I grow, you grow, I grow, you grow. And you're in this volleyball game of like just growing together. And you're not, maybe not in the like exact same speed, but you're constantly like volleying back and forth. I always tell Garrett, I'm like, Garrett and I take turns like leading in a way. You know what I mean? We're like, okay, now it's your season. Now it's my season. Now it's your season. And that's like really why our relationship has even worked, because we're both kind of like challenging one another and growing at the same time.
Yeah. And I'm sure even like, so we're actually starting next week. We have 5 events. They are 2 days apiece. So we have 10 days of events, a few days of filming, a couple of extra trainings to do for another event in December. Like Danielle and I are pretty much going to be MIA for the next
we'll
like
see you in December.
2.5, literally.
We'll see you at Thanksgiving.
See you at Thanksgiving. Yeah. But even inside of that, like, I think it's so cool that you guys can volley back and forth, because you're obviously like, you're almost not going to be home. You're basically gonna be living with me at the office here, by the way.
Bring my sleeping bag.
Yeah. We're gonna bring a cot and sleep right in this podcast room. But even then it's cool, because then it's like, okay, Garrett, like I'm gonna be not MIA away from the family, but my focus for these next 2.5 weeks is work. So then I need you to hold down the fort at home.
I actually didn't message him that. I just messaged the nanny. Because I told him, he goes, we had this conversation last night. Literally, I go, I need you to know we have back-to-back events from our virtual stuff. We like had to, I'm like, we have back-to-back events for the next 2 weeks. I'm like, so he's all, oh, is that already next week? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, are you sure? Did you clear it with Jeff? And I'm like, literally, I'm like, you're cute. You think we like just decided to use...
Sir, we've been doing... Pre-training was 3 months long.
I'm like, no, because we share an event space. And I'm like, no, we've cleared the space. Like, don't get any wild hairs up your ass. Like, that space is mine. And he's all, oh, okay. And I could tell he was like getting anxious. And I was like, and don't worry, I've already texted Rosie the nanny and told her that she's on duty. And like, I'm just telling you, do your thing. I'm just saying, if I show up, I'm exhausted, like it's game week for me.
Yeah,
so.
there's no tumbling around any sheets. I'm gonna come home and sleep. This is your forewarning.
Like
of that.
I will be in bed at 8:30, just to be clear with that.
There are some event days I've fallen asleep at 7:30 before.
Well, especially as it gets darker now. Like literally, like last night, I made dinner and then I was like, well, are we wrapping up for the night? And Garrett looks at me and goes, it's 7:45. I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, all right, turn on a movie.
So was that a no? Or was that just
and then
like
at 9:30, I was like, I can't keep my eyes open, guys. I'm out.
I think I laid on my couch half asleep, and then finally I was like, oh, fuck it.
You're like, why am I forcing? You know what, though? If I go to bed too early, I randomly wake up at like 3 a.m. I'm like, are we ready? Are we going? Should I get up? What are we doing? Like,
I woke up at 4:30 this morning.
I don't like to get up before 6, though. So I have to.
6?
Is that sleeping in for you?
Oh my God, I'd panic. If I woke up at 6 o'clock, I'd feel like my day was ruined.
No, I like 6:30 is when I usually get up. And I go to bed at 9:30. I sleep a lot.
Oh my God.
But I'm that person during the day. Like I don't sit
you
down.
Sleep
like
9 hours.
I'm like eating standing. I'm like, what? Like I can't
Do you know the only one rule I have with eating? I will not eat and work at the same time. Because I feel like, not that it gives me a stomachache, but I feel like...
It would be weird if you were eating while doing hair.
Well, no, but like even, like, so I do like a lot of computer work, like with the students and things like that, but you will almost never catch me eating in front of my computer and typing. I'm like, you can take 20 minutes out of the fucking day to eat your food, let it settle, and then go right back to work.
I'm like, God, I like get annoyed that I have to chew. I'm like, just get in.
Nope, because I feel like that's like my recharge. It's like me plugging in my battery, being like, this fucking salad is so good.
Yeah,
just
but
enjoy it.
I eat like 5 meals a day. So like by my...
Okay, no, I don't do that.
By like my 4th one, I'm like, just get it in. Just get it in.
Snacks, I will eat while working. But like meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, absolutely not.
No, Yeah.
It's just like weird choices. It's just my choice and decision.
I'm constantly multitasking, but it's fine. So I get lots of sleep. I eat lots.
You sleep 9 hours a day. That's so much.
I think I got in the habit of that because with my baby, it was like interrupted sleep, right? So if I wanted like even 7 hours because she was waking up a couple times during the night, I felt like I had to like give myself a 9-hour stretch just to get 7 hours.
See, I don't like going to sleep before 10, and I don't like sleeping past 5.
That's weird.
10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 7 hours. How much more do you want me to sleep?
I don't know. Anyways, off topic of this of the sleeping patterns.
But not. I mean, it's really not, because think about it when you have kids. Like, someone's got to take care of the fucking kids.
I know.
But I do like, anyway, I like what you said of that. Like, one parent will, like, take charge in one time, one will take in another.
But I think that goes, like, in business relationships, too, because I remember when I was, like, trying to be a salon, my own salon manager, plus I was doing all my marketing, plus I was doing all my education. Like, I was wearing too many hats. And it wasn't that I couldn't do it, but I couldn't focus the time and energy that I needed to be, like, a really good salon manager. And like, even down to, like, making sure I had enough color in stock and knowing the numbers and the hair stock. It was just like, fuck it. Here's 10 grand into hair this month. Here's 10 grand into color this month. And then I was like, whoa, like you have to know every little detail or your salon is not going to be profitable. You can't just be like,
And you know what else I feel? Because I feel like this is something hard, especially that hairstylists really deal with, is like hurt feelings. Like if you know your assistant doesn't work, or your salon manager isn't working, or whatever it is, it might be time to let them go and bring someone else in. And I feel like that's really hard because we're like, oh my God, but I love her. I don't want to hurt her feelings.
Right.
But it's either you have the hard conversation of like, hey, you're really not holding up to the standard that I'm expecting. Or it's like,
you can always tell when somebody energetically is not
when they're
all
out.
in. Yeah. And that's when you have to have tough conversations where it's not like, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you why this isn't a fit. I simply ask people, what do you want? Why are you here? And what do you want? Because in the end, I want you to win and you don't want to be here. So both of us are suffering in this relationship. So what do you want? And I think that's like, I think if you go into a conversation with somebody like that, instead of like trying to like blame or like, hey, this is why, this is justifying me firing you or not. I'm kind of like literally like, what do you want right now in this situation, right? And I think it kind of takes the feelings out of it, and you're kind of like, it almost like lightens the energy in the room where you're not like, you don't feel like you're attacking somebody or arguing to be right.
Because it doesn't have to be I hate you because I hate you. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just like, you know what? Some things work for a time, but not everything is forever. Right. And I feel like even with artists, that's the biggest thing. Like, well, I don't want her assistant. What if she leaves? That's okay.
She's an assistant. Eventually, they're going to want to leave.
Yes, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you were a shitty boss. It doesn't mean they were a shitty assistant.
Right.
People grow. Like, think about the places where you assisted or you helped like someone else and you had a boss. Were you there forever? No, you weren't. Does it mean they were bad or you were bad? No, but people grow, and that's the great part of life, but you have to be okay with that.
Right. And I think too, like I said, when I was wearing too many hats, I kept even trying to hire people to be salon managers, but it wasn't even like, I got to that desperation phase where I'd like ask my artist, I'd be like, you
guy who slept on my bench.
Do you want to make more money
night?
this month? Like, I know you're doing hair full time, but you should be the salon manager. Like, you want that job. It's an opportunity. You're going to like it. And then I was like, why isn't it working? Why? I mean, it's like they didn't want that role. They didn't want to be that. And so even like when I had to hire a salon manager, I'm like, I have to pick somebody who's had salon experience managing and doing that kind of thing that can help my company grow. And I just think that when you guys see, whether it's in your personal life or in your business life, if you see these little red flags or you see yourself going like head first into the tsunami, start looking at what are the options to set yourself up for success later down the road so that you don't get in that burnout phase or you don't get in that drowning phase. Like, you have to be able to recognize the signs before you get there, or you will always be in that fight or flight mode. And then that's so awful because you feel like you're stuck. You're literally like, fuck it, I have no time. I'm too busy. I can't do anything. I'm a shitty mom. I'm a shitty business owner. I'm a shitty. And like, it's because you ignored all the little signs of little things that you needed to do to put out those fires.
I mean, I feel like that's a great way to end the podcast.
I know.
You fucking nailed it, Danielle.
We nailed it.
You're like a pro.
You know, I've gotten a few reps doing this podcast. I used to like hate getting on video. Did you like? And yeah. And I feel like I've come a long way. Like I was that person that I'd get on video and it was like I couldn't get my words out. I'd be like, or I always tell my students like, I sound dumb. I'm like, oh no, I get it. When I first started doing videos, I'd be like, I'm like, and yeah, and I'd use a lot of filler words because I was literally, it's like I couldn't get my thoughts together quick enough. And I feel like that was the one thing with teaching and doing the podcast is I'm like, oh, I don't sound half dumb anymore. That's great. And it just takes repetition. So even tell my artists, you guys, if you are that person that's like, oh my God, I can't get on video, I can't get on camera, you just have to do it and be willing to fuck up, throw yourself out there, and with repetition, you'll get better. So thank you guys so much for listening to today's podcast. We try to do a new one every week. We're going into event week, so we might have to play a few repeats, but we got 150 of them out there, and I'm sure you haven't listened to all 150. So you might catch a couple repeats, and we'll see you guys here every Tuesday on the Big Money Stylist Podcast.